Road trip in Canada has got to be on everyone's bucket list. But what's the best way to travel it? Car or RV? We're Chris and Beck, and after travelling Australia via road for the past 4 years, we couldn't wait to do the same in British Columbia for a month. While planning our road trip, we weren't sure what would be better, exploring via motorhome or a car and staying at Airbnbs. So we spent 2 weeks in both to give you an idea of the pros and cons of each. We will discuss the differences in comfort, parking, accommodation, food, and of course, a cost breakdown of everything at the end. So let's start off with parking. And it pretty much goes without saying, but a car is much easier to park than an RV. However, coming from Australia, I was very surprised with all the Canadian tourist towns having designated RV parking areas. The car is definitely a lot easier because you can go straight into town, park right in front of that favorite cafe, and the RV parking spots are normally a little bit of a walk to town. We're talking maybe 5-minute walk, but it does mean that you got to kind of plan a little bit more to find out where your RV parking is. The one positive thing about it is most of that RV parking was free. We barely paid for parking anywhere we went, and so that was a huge plus. So for parking, it's definitely a win for car and Airbnb. So next is driving and comfort experience. On one hand, your car is definitely a lot easier and more comfortable over long distances, which means you generally get to your spot less tired and ready to do the activity. Now, there is a lot of driving to do in Canada depending on what your itinerary is, and we did a lot of driving both in the car and in the RV, and so this became a bit of a factor. But on the other hand, with the RV, you have these massive windows and you have these huge panoramic views as you're driving through those super scenic valleys, and so in an RV, you're kind of going a little bit slower and you're taking in that experience as well. Depending on what you like, if you really love the journey, the experience of it all, then the RV kind of wins, but it's a little bit more tiring than driving a car. For this one, I'm going to give the win to the car because I really value turning up to a spot not exhausted. The next one, and this is a big one, your accommodation options. These definitely can make or break your trip. So with a car, you need to book Airbnbs or hotels, but you need accommodation options at each particular stop. There's definitely pros to this because you can stay in beautiful, unique Airbnbs, meet some local people, or you can go into hotels and have your own spot. One thing though is especially the time where we went, which is kind of shoulder season going into summer, a lot of those accommodations were booked out or they're actually quite expensive. You're talking anywhere between $150 a night to maybe $300 a night for a standard hotel room or a standard Airbnb where you'd be in there by yourself. The house share options on Airbnb get as low as about $100 and were comparable in price as getting 2 bunk beds in a hostel. On the other hand, you have the big RV, which basically you pull up anywhere at any camping spot and you are home. You've got a shower, you've got cooking facilities, a big bed, seating, you got everything in there, and you can park at seriously some of the most incredible camping spots that we've ever stayed at. Now, the Canadian national parks are excellent at maintaining amazing campsites inside the national parks. So often you're staying at a beautiful campsite with a fire, with free wood, with shower facilities and toilet facilities right under an amazing waterfall or right next to that amazing site that you've seen on all the photos. In Canada, the sun in summer stays up longer, so we would adventure late into the night, 10 p.m, 11 p.m, and not worry about checking into our accommodation because we just pull up into our pre-booked campsite. So accommodation wise, I'm gonna say that the RV wins because road trip in Canada and waking up to those amazing national park sites is definitely hard to beat. Next was packing and organization, and to be honest with you, this one was a little bit of a pet peeve with me with the car. I got super frustrated with packing our gear up almost every single day or every 2 days trying to rearrange everything. It also meant that the back of the car was an absolute absolute mess. Canada, very much like New Zealand, has 4 seasons in one day. So you'll wake up and it might be absolutely freezing cold. You have all your clothes on, beanie, everything, and then by 10 a.m. it's cooking and you've got a t-shirt on, some shorts on, and then about lunchtime it goes back to being cold. We're chopping and changing outfits all the time, and the back of the car became an absolute mess. Especially because we do a lot of content creation, there are even more outfits everywhere. And so this is really where the RV shines, is because it's basically like having a home on wheels. You have your whole full wardrobe there. Everything's got its spot, you know where it is, it's all packed away nicely. That would be a massive win for families. Packing organization, definitely a huge win for the RV. Next one is food and cooking. And just like accommodation, this is actually gonna make or break your trip. A lot of the places you go in Canada are national parks, so they're quite remote and they involve quite a bit of driving. This means that most of the times when you're in the national parks, there's not a lot of food options around. So we found in the car, it was a little bit difficult to get consistent food options. And we found ourselves paying a huge amount of money for a sandwich that we didn't really like, or we found ourselves getting quite hangry and frustrated because we hadn't planned ahead with our food options. With the RV, everything is there. You have a massive fridge, and so if you're hungry, for example, at Emerald Lake, we got hungry halfway through the site, and so we just went back to the caravan and cooked up lunch and then continued on. That also meant that we ate a lot better as well, and food, of course, was a lot cheaper. That being said, we went to some amazing dinner and lunch options when we were in the car, and that was a really big positive because we were able to do some dining out options. Not to say we didn't do the dining out options in the RV, but most of the time we preferred to eat in. We saved a bit of money that way. I definitely think it's a win for an RV on the cooking options, just to keep away the hangry episodes. Now, next one, to be perfectly honest with you, is all depending on your style of travel. For us, we've traveled Australia in an RV for a long time, and we love the bus life, the van life living. And so for us, the camping experience was absolutely incredible in an RV, especially when we're talking about in the accommodation options, is when you have camping sites that are right next to the national parks, and they're super cheap as well. They're only about $15, really well priced. A car often means that you miss out on that classic camping experience and that classic feeling of being outdoors at night having a fire. The RV offers that full camping vibe, and the great thing about Canada that not a lot of people know is those national parks you can have a fire. Coming from Aussie, that is a massive luxury. They even give you free firewood with the $15 camping fee. And the other thing about the camping experience for RVs that we absolutely love is meeting the community. At RV camping sites, people love to have a chat, and you learn about some really awesome hidden sites and meet some great people as well. It's a community we've absolutely loved here in Australia, and it's no different in Canada as well. We found some incredible spots just by chatting to our neighbors at the campsite. So 100% a win for RV on the camping experience, but it is all dependent on the way you love to travel. Okay, we touched on it briefly, but weather flexibility. In Canada, there's 4 seasons in one day, and you need to chop and change between clothes all the time. But it also rains without warning all the time. At Emerald Lake, we're just walking, it is completely sunny, and all of a sudden it's pouring down with rain. There's a rainbow, but it's still sunny as well. So we found when these storms hit, being in a car was a little bit frustrating. So we just had to sit there and wait for the storm to pass. Where with the RV, we could just go back to the RV, maybe cook something up, maybe get the laptop out and do a bit of editing, or read a book, lie on the bed and just relax like you would at home. So it gave us a lot of flexibility with the weather. There were a couple of days that were bad, and we just enjoyed hanging out, getting a bit of work done, or just reading a book. So for weather, the RV wins, because basically you're driving your home with you and you can park up and wait wherever you want. So next is the fuel costs and efficiency. Goes without saying, the car is much cheaper, and we'll talk about that very soon. But the one thing I did really enjoy is that the RV had a massive tank. So we actually got around 900 kilometers per tank. It's just a bit expensive to fill that tank up. But however, fuel costs, the car is always going to win, which brings us into the next thing. And this is the big one the costs and budgets considerations. So let's break this down. So the first one is rental cost, and this differed a huge amount between our vehicles, but it was $1,576 for the 14 days renting our car off Turo. It averaged actually about $113 per day, because even though it looks cheap on Turo, they add additional expenses after that as well, and we also needed a larger car to fit in our baggage and everything like that. Now with the RV, we definitely didn't rent the cheapest option. We had the C-Class motorhome from Fraserway RV, which was an amazing motorhome, but actually could sleep up to 6 people. And there was just 2 of us. You can definitely, if you book in advance, rent the cheaper or smaller versions, and they do go down quite a bit in price. But for us, it was $3,519 for the 14 days. Accommodation for the car was literally just Airbnbs and Booking.com, and that was $2,548. Accommodation with the RV was just camping site fees, that's it, because we drive around in a house, was only $346. That was literally just the national park camping fees. Maybe a nice RV camp in there I think we stayed at over 14 days. So massive change. So food, we ate out almost all the time in the car, and with the RV, we cooked a lot, but we still went out a few times, getting a nice dinner and a nice lunch. So I've added that all in. The car was $2,477 and the RV was $1,841. Now fuel I've calculated per 100 kilometers. The reason is that we only drove 650 kilometers in the car, but in the RV, we drove a massive 2,400 kilometers. For the car, it was about $35 per 100 kilometers, and for the RV, it was about $46 per 100 kilometers. So evening it out, 1,000 kilometers for the car, 1,000 kilometers for the RV, 350 for the car, 460 for the RV. Miscellaneous things like parking, so $106 over that 14 days. For the RV, it was only $45. Other than that, we barely paid for parking at all. So the grand total over 14 days for each car and RV is $6,707 for the car plus Airbnb/Booking.com, and for the RV over 14 days the total cost was $5,751. So a difference of $1,000. To be honest with you, I was very surprised by this. I thought that the car was going to be much cheaper than the RV due to the initial rental cost. And with the RV, you could do it a lot cheaper as well. We weren't trying to be cheap on food. While we ate most of the time in, we still had coffee maybe twice every single day and went out to a couple nice restaurants as well. Hope you enjoyed, guys. Please like and subscribe. We also have another video on an itinerary that we did for the 14 days with the RV, so go over check that out. And also we did an RV walkthrough as well to show you exactly how the beautiful C-Class from Fraserway Motorhome is laid out.